Hello, I'm Royal Orr. Welcome to our special Epiphany series, marking the beginning of 2025, the year in which we will be celebrating the 100th anniversary of the founding of the United Church. This week, we're taking a look at an absolutely essential part of life in the United Church, and that is music. Joining us to talk a little bit about that, John Ambrose and Lloyd MacLean, and of course, Brian Arthur Brown will be wrapping up at the end of our half hour, just giving us a bit of a look ahead for the rest of the series. So let me start with what a pleasure it is to meet online the Reverend John Ambrose, now a retired United Church minister, but I think best known in his career for the guy who was responsible for pulling together Voices United, which is, of course, just a pillar, a cornerstone of life in our church over the last 50 years or so. John, it's such a pleasure to welcome you here today.
Thank you very much, and it's lovely to be a part of this. Thank you.
So let's maybe start by asking you to think what you've seen over your career and over your life within the United Church, because you would have had experience before you became a minister, I assume, with how music has developed, the importance of music and the resources that the church has used over the last century.
That's a very broad subject, but let me give you a little bit. I guess I span all of the hymnaries of the United Church, having, being my age, but music is very vital and very central to United Church participation. I mean, we're looking at, the liturgy is meaning the work of the people, and an important part of that work is the experience of singing together. And the singing together, of course, is also the inculcation of the words and the music that they are singing. It becomes often phrases that they keep. But of course, hymn collections as we know them are slowly passing off the scene. The technology that we have available now is making, a fairly considerable difference in terms of what the future might hold for congregational song or how that happens. Voices United is next year marking its 30th anniversary. I can't believe it. It seems to me it was only 10 years ago, but it was actually 30 years ago. Normally, the lifespan of a hymnal is around 23, 25 years, and then its use diminishes significantly. My sense is that Voices United is receiving a sustained place in the church's life, but very much augmented by more voices, and again to be augmented further with Then Let Us Sing. And those are quite natural developments. My sense is that congregational song is not as strong as it used to be. That sense of participation is not as strong as it used to be. When a new collection comes out, much attention is usually given to helping people learn it. And that means some repetition and some encouragement, some very intentional teaching and so on. That doesn't seem to be happening to the same extent in churches today. And I may be wrong, but what in some of my observations, find that people are more observers, than participants. Not sure, what the screen has done, for that, because once you enter the screen, the books tend to kind of fade away in terms of their usage. And for those who read music, of course, then there is a loss there. They have to kind of learn in the same way as others.
Right.
But I think still congregational song is such a vital part of the experience of Sunday worship.
And hymns can become such a source of emotional energy. I mean, which also I assume translates into big emotions. Well, I know I lived it in a couple of little congregations. Big emotions when you do move from one collection to the next. People who didn't want to give up the hymnary, who resisted mightily picking up the new red book, and so what you're talking about, this phenomenon you're talking about, do you anticipate there'll be maybe less emotional reaction, as I'm characterizing it, to the new Then Let Us Sing? Are people kind of less attached to these collections of hymns?
I think the good folks who have worked on Then Let Us Sing probably will need to encourage maybe some patterns of introducing congregations to their collection. That's the very intentional teaching, learning, encompassing, absorbing is important in the early stages. More Voices did very, very, very well that way. People were, glad to receive it. One of the problems with old hymns is with new collections is you almost have to let go a lot of material from the past. I mean, I was reading Holy, Holy, Holy the other day and thinking, oh my goodness, the imagery is way beyond anything we could possibly carry on, to a new generation. But there really needs to be strong patterns of introduction to it. When Voices United came out, a number of us crossed the country doing workshops all over the place just to generate and, as you say, grasp the emotional interest in this collection that they want to sing it. And there are such beautiful things like, and I will raise you up on the eagle's wings. You can go through and find a pile of new texts and tunes that are rich.
But it really takes a while. I mean, when
It
you
does.
just what you just sung, that's one in the quiet curve of evening, which has become meaningful in so many congregations and
It's beautiful.
faith. I, the Lord of Sea and Sky. I mean, I could go through my list of favorite hymns in Voices United. But you're mentioning, your allusion to Holy, 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 kind of reminds me of how complex this process is, because it's not just music, it's theology, it's perspectives on faith. I mean, this is a very complex process of pulling together a new
Oh, it
collection.
is. It is. Let me just give you a little example here. Holy, holy, holy. All the saints adore thee, casting down their golden crowns around the glassy sea, and so on. You really can't sell that to a contemporary congregation, and there are quite a few that way. When we were doing Voices United, we tried to modify some of the phrases in order to bring them a little closer to people's experience and understanding today.
With outrage expressed by some when you did
Oh
that.
my goodness, I still see a fellow walking up and down in front of 85 St. Clair years ago, leave our hymns alone, a great big sign protesting it. Then it went on to the front of the Toronto Star, and I had calls
I
and
can.
letters. Mhm. It's a difficult time in that I think culturally participation in this kind of congregational song is not as strong as maybe past generations. And so there's often a need to cultivate or help recultivate that to put people at ease in joining in the song.
Right. Well, put them at ease in joining, but is there also not, and again, this is musicians that can approach this and think about this, but I often think that a lot of the hymns especially in the old hymnary, to a certain extent in Voices United, are laid out and written for four parts, which means that the melody line is really high. Like your voice gives out after about verse 3, and then some of those newer pieces, like in the quiet curve of evening and other things, seem to have kind of brought the pitch down a little bit. It just becomes easier, it seems to me, to sing in some of those more modern hymns. I assume that's something intentional on the part of the people who've written those songs.
It's a very good observation, actually, Royal. Some of them are pitched really too high, and in my age and my voice now, I can't reach it the same way, and so you do need to pitch them, somewhat lower, with not too many flats or sharps. So that's hard for sort of the less experienced musicians. But yes, to bring them down, um, I think. I think a little bit of work needs to be done, though, with the introduction of new material. to maybe give some guides to congregations that it's not just getting the choir to learn the music, but also to take the time to help the congregation embrace it. And
Yeah, well, that and obviously, I think the reduced numbers in many of our communities of faith
Mhm.
in worship is something, but because it's true for people of, I guess I'm saying my generation, if you end up at one of those United Church gatherings, which maybe brings several congregations together, and you're completely surrounded by people who are into it, and you all feel like old style Welsh Methodists together belting it out. Wow, there's a surge that comes from that, which is unlike
Mhm.
anything
It's
else.
an experience, isn't it?
It
Hmm.
really is.
Oh,
Yeah,
you
I
know,
mean,
oh,
you
yeah.
really feel the awe of the moment comes out in that.
Well, I want to hear what Lloyd has to say about these important questions that you guys are raising, because there are congregations. Well, we're hoping to have some of that experience by having clusters in the anniversary week and so on. And there are at least 100 clusters organizing across Canada in which the church will be filled. And we hope that the music will be something that Royal just described, and so on. But is Then Let Us Sing going to do that, Lloyd?
Well, we hope so. As when this project began, it was with the intention of developing an ecumenical hymnal, and we realized pretty quickly that we in the United Church don't really need a new hymnal. There's a lot of miles left in Voices United. Voices United tends to be leading edge for a great many congregations right across North America. And so we didn't want to lose sight of that. But also the success of More Voices and in the French-speaking community, No Voix Unie, means that we have this wealth of material, but it's time for another supplement or some opportunity to showcase the new material that's being reported and created every day. So that's the point you raise, Royal, about the experience of singing in a full church is an excellent one. And John, as a past president of the Hymn Society, can attest to the fact that at the annual conferences of the Hymn Society, there's Paul. Good job, Paul.
Sorry, I had down 10:30 down as the time, so I don't know where I went wrong.
We're already recording. Paul, great to have you. I'll get to you in a moment. So Lloyd, just because you slipped in there after Brian's question, let me introduce you a little bit more fulsomely.
Sure.
And Lloyd MacLean, who's had a career as a music director in a number of maritime churches, continues as a music director in one small congregation there. But most importantly for our conversation today, has been the volunteer chair of the whole effort to pull together Then Let Us Sing, which is anticipated as part of this centennial celebration, a new supplement, and Lloyd is just describing a little bit of the intention behind it, but as well, interesting to hear you say that Voices United you see is going to be kind of continuing as a kind of like a core or a baseline resource that this will supplement. Is that sort of the vision of this?
Well, part of the project, a very important part of the project was to align with our periodical worship resource gathering, which is now gathering online. So what we intended to do and are in fact doing was digitizing almost the entirety of Voices United, More Voices, No Voix Unie, and the new material for the Then Let Us Sing supplement.
And so that whole big package is going to become available.
That will become available through the auspices of onelicense.net. Many of our congregations already have licenses, which enables them to legally reproduce lyrics and melody lines and so on in their bulletins, or if they project, then on screens as well.
Well, you mentioned screens because technology is obviously shaping how you are packaging this, and probably
Absolutely.
you're thinking about the content itself. Can you maybe talk a little bit more about what seems to be the trends and how you're trying to meet them with Then Let Us Sing in terms of both tech, but also maybe some of these issues we were talking to John about, in terms of just uh, new material, new ways of thinking about music in church.
Sure. Well, Paul is probably going to be able to contribute some good comments in that area. But just before I hand it off to him, I will say that we have done a lot of outreach. We had subcommittees involved as far as the project was concerned, and part of the work of some of those subcommittees was to contact groups that might be seen as new groups to the United Church in general terms. And Brian has alluded to that youth movement with over 100 Black youth meeting for an event not too long ago. But that's why our subcommittees went out of their way to try and contact as many groups who might be a little outside of the standard United Church box in terms of to find out what they are singing now and what would be helpful for them to see appear in a United Church resource.
Okay, well then let's talk to Paul for a moment. Paul Sales
thanks.
is, as I think I'm going to get this right, you're the marketing and animation director, a volunteer, but still obviously deeply involved in the production, in the creation and production of Then Let Us Sing. So Lloyd was saying you were heading off across the country. What did you hear from congregations and communities of faith other than congregations in terms of their expectations and their needs?
Well, the expectations I've been hearing about have been a lot of positive things. Looking forward to being able to work digitally with all of this stuff, and of course, one of the bit of the icing on the cake is there will be a discount on your one license fees as you register as the United Church congregation. You'll automatically be put over to the Let Us Sing portal, and that also applies to congregations in the United Church of Christ, one of our full communion partners, and also the Christian Church Disciples of Christ in Canada Church as well. They're both full partners. So any congregations in those will be able to have access to Then Let Us Sing, get the discount, and they have all access to everything else on one license. So it's quite a big thing. So there's a lot of enthusiasm about that. Also about the idea that they'll be able to use the music depending on which license they buy. Use the music in any way they find practical for them, whether it's to copy, print, project, or stream, which is becoming more and more vital in today's church world. So we're really excited about that. People are also really looking forward to new songs. As much to this supplement is expanding what we already have. Obviously, we have 3 great hymnals already, plus the Korean collection, and people are looking forward to getting new music that will bring in a broader range of groups musically and theologically, probably, but. One thing that comes to my mind is that I've heard that today in the United Church of Canada, over 80 languages are spoken in worship somewhere across the country. And I think that's phenomenal because you think back in 1925, the church, I mean, I wasn't there obviously, but I'm thinking the church at the time was probably mostly unilingual English. And so the hymn books, were part of that. And so over the years, and then especially with John Ambrose's work with Voices United, the language promoted or used got broader and broader, and now we're here where we're expanding those areas. Also, ethnocultural groups, trying to make sure they feel included in our music.
Okay, well, let me swing back to John just for a moment, because I think that was one of the quite interesting and notable things about Voices United. I mean, it's not extensive, but there's clearly an effort made to have other languages in there. A bit of French, a bit of Mohawk, I mean, you probably can remember all the languages you included. But can you kind of recast your mind to that decision, John, to sort of do that? What was going on in the minds of you and your colleagues when you said to yourselves, no, it's not enough just to have a 100% English format in this case. We've got to start integrating some of this diversity in there.
The membership of the committee was very large. It was 24 members, and they represented a huge spectrum of the church, but primarily on music. And it was very, very clear from the beginning that we must embrace our various ethnic groups in song there. And so I actually met with various groups. I met with Japanese, Chinese. Those were the main ones that I met with. And then others were doing work with the French congregations and so on to see what might be incorporated, realizing that this may not be the only resource for these congregations, but if they were using Voices United, they could see something of themselves in that. Royal, I might want to ask a little question too, in terms of the wonderful technology that we have, but what would appear on the screen? Would it just be the text? Would it be a melody line in text? Would it be just a reproduction of the 4-part and so on? Like, I'm trying to get a picture of what's it going to actually look like.
There'll be some of all of that. Lyrics for sure. In some cases, lyric and melody line. In other cases where it's a shorter song and there's a 4-part arrangement available, then that would appear as well.
Well, I think because this is, I mean, it's an interesting question, and I think we're all looking forward to it. Actually, I should ask that question before I forget. Do we have a timeline which tells us when this will be available in 2025? Do we know yet just how soon people are going to have access to this?
The print book will be published and available in people's hands for June 2025.
All right, so in time, if theoretically in time for the actual national celebration of the anniversary.
Exactly. And the digital component, this also highlights something that we're able to do with this, is to maintain Then Let Us Sing as a dynamic program that we can add to, and as required as time goes on. It won't be the existing committee, but there will be a new committee taking over for the balance of once we get it established in 2025, that will look after
so this digital
development. Yes.
This digital resource is going to be coming out in waves or in pieces. Is that it? Or I mean, it'll be enriched as we go along.
There will be one big splash.
Okay.
And then a few we'll also hope that the new committee takes care of the ripples that will eventually show up.
But to return to John's question, so it sounds like, I mean, it's almost like dependent on the hymn or the song itself. There might be different things available for different songs. I mean, in some cases, a 4-part arrangement. In some cases, maybe a melody line with, I see increasingly guitar chords or just like chords, chord indications. But presumably everything available so that if I want to put the lyrics up on the big projector, I can just grab them from this resource on the digital resource and put it up on screen, like almost, literally in seconds, if that's what I want to do. That's right. The kind of thing we're talking about. Okay, well, so let me just though then swing back to this being part of a celebration. I mean, I'm sure you've Given the complexity of this, you have struggled, Lloyd and Paul, to kind of make sure this thing actually happens, A, in 2025 and B, by June in 2025. But this stands to be a real centerpiece for our celebration this year, will it not?
Hope so.
Yeah, I think it will be. That was always the plan. And, as from the promotional perspective, the dates have been shifting. Sand's been moving as things have developed, and maybe some things not as quickly as others. But the plan is that we are really aware that in the spring we have regional council meetings coming up, and that was going to be a major focus of our introduction to the book and to the resource. And so that was a challenge lately. And what we are going to be doing is preparing what we call a preview collection, which will be something like the sampler with 20 pieces that we think will help regions or anybody else who's already scheduled an introductory event in a country to use in their events. It'll cover the kind of more the breadth of what we've got. coming of the new stuff, and so they'll have a chance to use that. And then for the celebration itself on the 100th anniversary, we are going to put together a booklet of about 5 or 6 hymns that we think are quite suitable to the celebration of the church, and that will be available for the service in St. John's, and then after that as well. So it'll be it's going to be in stages.
Right. And so where can people go just to keep track of what's new? Like, where should I look for you folks?
Well, a really good place is the website, thenletussing.ca. It's a good place to go. You can sign up for a newsletter there and get the updates as they come along. The other thing is Facebook, and I'm helping Aaron Gallegos go work on that to keep introducing things to people and bringing up. If we get questions, for example, I'll take those questions and put them in on Facebook, and I've got this little thing called We Get Questions, and it's Opus 1, Opus 2. Each edition gets a little number, and so that's one way to help answer it.
Then letussing.ca.
That's the key one, and then Facebook page, just type in Then Let Us Sing.
Okay, great. Listen, I'm sorry we have only this limited amount of time, because I know I could talk to you guys about music and go back to John and ask him to sing a little bit more, and we could take all morning if we had that time. But I want to thank John Ambrose, Lloyd MacLean, and Paul Sales for being with us. And now turn to Brian for a bit of a wrap up. Brian.
Well, everybody's right that music has been so important in the United Church. And I agree with John Ambrose that we haven't been quite as involved in the last number of years, last number of decades. There's a contemporary style that has drums and guitars and performers on stage, and we stand and we sometimes clap with them, but we're mostly watching them and so on. And so we're hoping that the new Then Let Us Sing leads us into a more fulsome participation. And that'll certainly be true on the language issue as well, because it being online, I know from my work with them that ethnic congregations are hoping that what started with Voices United, introducing various whatever, is going to be multiplied many times over and ongoing in its multiplication for them. And in this respect, the United Church is a leader in maybe in the world. We'll see how this turns out for us. But the United Church has been the leader in the world on ordination and women's ministries. The United Church has been the leader on gay marriage, gay ministries, and so on. And I have contacts. I'm connected with a United Church of Christ congregation in New York City. And actually, they are so looking forward to this. It's going to become their hymn book. It was mentioned that there are already congregations, mostly in the States, but not entirely in the States. One of the clusters for our anniversary, and there are about 100 organizing and taking place, one of them is being hosted by a disciples congregation in Liverpool, Nova Scotia. And they are aware of this and planning to make it and so on. So there are things that have to happen. I know there are some advantages to the screens, but the big white screens flopping down are to some a distraction and not aesthetic. But the congregations that I've mentioned in the States, and the one that I happen to worship at in Niagara Falls, does not have a white floppy screen falling down. It has very attractive on both sides of the church large size TV screens, which show the thing, and the hymns look like they are on a stained glass window practically. They are so beautifully presented. So we'll see some of these things we hope going forward. Lloyd MacLean will be at a cluster in Truro, Nova Scotia during the anniversary, and he'll be helping us to bless and launch at least the print edition of it. We'll have it there, we hope, and so on. And that part will be on the Vision TV congregational service and so on. But anyway, the United Church book that is the background for what we're doing in this study expresses the hope that Some of the new music in Then Let Us Sing will be arranged to present in a singable way the beauty of holiness. And it may succeed some of the more raucous contemporary music where we are observers. We'll find out if that's happening during the anniversary, but I have to say that there are congregations that are full. We hope the cluster services are full and giving us that old time experience that Royal was describing. But there are congregations like St. Andrew's Wesley in Vancouver that has 4 services on Sunday. The whole story about everything's dwindling, everything's declining is not so. And part of the going ahead is, we think, the release of Then Let Us Sing and so on. So then the kind of thing that I'm looking for is described in the Untied Church. It's halfway between Leonard Cohen and Arvo Pärt. Arvo Pärt is the great Estonian music director in our time who has single-handedly revived the Orthodox churches around the world with his music and so on. But also Catholics and Anglicans have made a big thing of it, and it has begun to move, we feel, into the United Church. Leonard Cohen and Arvo Pärt were friends, and there's a balance in their music. But anyway, those watching this show, if we'll call it that, this evening or tomorrow, might now follow up. They always look for where's a good way in their own discussion. And they can have a discussion of chapter 14 on worship in the beauty of holiness. I suggest that to them. Next week, our Epiphany anniversary study will be a mixed bag. Reviewing and previewing ministries in French, ecumenical shared ministries, and ministries of social action. We call it the social gospel. It's a chapter in the, we'll have a brief review by Lloyd of the social gospel, which is found in a new book of his. Lloyd will be with us at that time, and we'll see you then.